Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told This podcast, where we take these deep dives into captivating stories. And today we're diving into the world of high finance and intrigue. We're talking about the story of Wirecard, a German payment processing company that soared to incredible heights before crashing down in a scandal that shook the global financial system.
It's a story that really, I think, captures the dangers of ambition and the really intricate kind of dance between corporate greed and regulatory oversight.
Yeah, absolutely. What's fascinating is how this company, starting from really humble beginnings back in 1999, managed to kind of captivate the world with its meteoric rise. Imagine this. They initially served these niche markets, like gambling and adult websites. Not exactly the image of a future financial titan, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. But their journey to the top is marked by some pretty bold moves, like their unconventional reverse IPO in 2005. Instead of kind of the traditional route of launching an initial public offering, they took over the listing of a defunct call center company. This unusual maneuver raised eyebrows even back then, because it allowed Wirecard to bypass the typical scrutiny of a standard IPO and gain direct access to the stock market.
It was a shortcut that set the stage for their rapid ascent. And from there, Wirecard embarked on this aggressive expansion strategy, acquiring companies internationally and venturing into new markets at a breathtaking pace. Their revenue growth appeared phenomenal, seemingly outpacing all industry trends.
But even as they were painting this picture of success, cracks were already beginning to show. Some financial analysts were scrutinizing their balance sheets, noted some irregularities, and questioned the inflated prices Wirecard was shelling out for these acquisitions.
Ah, the early warning signs. It's incredible how these often get overlooked when a company is on such a seemingly unstoppable trajectory, and the doubts really started to gain traction in the mid-2000s.
Exactly. In 2008, a report highlighting accounting irregularities cast a shadow over Wirecard's seemingly impeccable image. And then in 2015, the Financial Times began publishing a series of investigative reports that revealed some worrying gaps in the company's short-term assets and liabilities. Basically, the money they claimed to have readily available didn't quite add up.
Okay, so now we had these red flags waving. How did Wirecard respond to this mounting scrutiny? Did they address the concerns?
Instead of confronting the allegations head-on, they took a remarkably aggressive approach. They went after their critics with lawsuits, attempting to silence dissent through legal pressure. There were even allegations of Wirecard employing sting operations to intimidate journalists and researchers who dared to question their financial dealings.
Wow, talk about shooting the messenger. That's a pretty strong reaction to criticism, wouldn't you say? It seems like they were trying to bury the concerns instead of addressing them transparently.
It certainly raises questions about what they were trying to hide, and their efforts to obfuscate went beyond just legal tactics. Wirecard constructed this incredibly complex corporate structure, relying heavily on opaque third-party acquirers, particularly in Southeast Asia. This web of interconnected entities made it incredibly difficult for outsiders to get a clear picture of their financial flows.
So they were deliberately creating this labyrinth of financial transactions, making it almost impossible to track the money trail. And for a while, this strategy worked. They managed to deflect scrutiny and maintain this illusion of success.
Exactly, and it's important to understand that this illusion was fueled, not just by Wirecard's own actions, but also by the failures of those who are supposed to be safeguarding the system.
You're talking about the auditors and regulators, right? The watchdogs who are supposed to keep companies honest.
Precisely. Wirecard's longtime auditor, Ernst & Young, a name synonymous with accounting integrity, failed to detect the fraud. Despite the mounting evidence, even the German financial regulator, BaFin, responsible for overseeing the financial system, seemed to miss or downplay the red flags.
It's almost unbelievable that a company could operate under such a cloud of suspicion for so long without any significant intervention. Were there any voices raising concerns during this period, besides the journalists at the Financial Times?
There were whistleblowers within Wirecard who tried to bring the truth to light. They bravely spoke out about the accounting irregularities and questionable practices they witnessed firsthand.
It takes a lot of courage to challenge those in power, especially when the stakes are so high. What happened to these whistleblowers? Were their concerns taken seriously?
Unfortunately, their warnings largely fell on deaf ears. Wirecard, with its aggressive legal tactics, managed to discredit and silence many of these internal voices.
It's a classic case of power dynamics at play. A company wielding its influence to suppress the truth. And the external watchdogs, the auditors and regulators, they were either complicit or simply unable to see through the elaborate facade.
It's a chilling reminder of how easily systems of accountability can fail. especially when confronted with a sophisticated and determined effort to deceive.
This story just keeps getting more and more intriguing. And before we delve into the dramatic unraveling of Wirecard's empire of deception, I want to remind our listeners to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the next part of this wild ride, where we explore the events that led to the company's spectacular collapse.
It's a tale filled with twists and turns you won't see coming, with revelations that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the world of finance.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told Us podcast. We're in the midst of unraveling this intricate web of deceit woven by Wirecard, a company that seemingly had it all before it all came crashing down.
Yeah, it's a story that really, I think, highlights the fragility of trust in financial markets and really the devastating consequences when that trust is shattered.
Before the break, we were discussing the early warning signs, the whistleblowers, and the failures of the auditors and regulators. It seemed like everyone was looking the other way while Wirecard was building this house of cards. But the truth, as they say, has a way of coming out.
And the truth did come out, spectacularly so. In 2019, the Financial Times, after years of relentless investigation, dropped a bombshell. They published a report alleging that Wirecard had been forging contracts and inflating profits in its Asian operations. This wasn't just some accounting discrepancy. This was a deliberate and systematic scheme to deceive investors and the public.
So this wasn't just a minor accounting error. This was a massive revelation of potential fraud. How did Wirecard react to this bombshell report?
Well, instead of addressing the allegations with transparency, Wirecard doubled down on its aggressive tactics. They denied any wrongdoing and continued to attack the Financial Times and anyone who dared to question their integrity.
It's remarkable how they clung to this facade of innocence, even when the evidence was mounting against them. It's almost like they believed their own lies.
It's a psychological phenomenon that we see time and time again in these kinds of cases. There's a level of denial and self-deception that allows individuals to continue perpetrating fraud, even when the walls are closing in.
So you have this company facing mounting pressure from investigative journalists, whistleblowers coming forward, and yet they still managed to hold on for a while, what ultimately led to their downfall.
The turning point came when Wirecard's auditor, Ernst & Young, finally started to ask some tough questions. They demanded access to Wirecard's bank accounts in the Philippines, where a significant portion of the company's alleged cash holdings were supposedly held.
This was the moment of truth, wasn't it? The moment when the facade could no longer be maintained.
Exactly. And what they found was shocking. The 1.9 billion euros that Wirecard claimed to have in those accounts simply didn't exist. It was a complete fabrication.
So the money had vanished. What happened next?
Well, in June 2020, Wirecard was forced to admit that the money was missing. The company, once a symbol of German technological prowess and financial innovation, filed for insolvency, sending shockwaves through the global financial system.
It's a stunning fall from grace. What happened to the key players involved in this massive fraud?
Markus Braun, the CEO of Wirecard, who had been the mastermind behind the company's meteoric rise, was arrested and charged with fraud, market manipulation, and accounting breaches. He's currently awaiting trial, maintaining his innocence.
And what about Jan Marsalek, the COO,
Yeah.
who was essentially the second in command at Wirecard?
Marsalek's story is even more intriguing. He disappeared just as the scandal broke, fleeing Germany on a private jet and becoming the subject of an international manhunt.
It's like something out of a spy novel. He's still on the run, right?
That's right. His whereabouts remain unknown, adding another layer of mystery to this already complex saga.
So we have the CEO facing trial, the COO on the run, and a company that has imploded in a spectacular fashion. What are the broader implications of the Wirecard scandal?
Well, the Wirecard scandal has had far-reaching consequences. It's exposed some serious weaknesses in corporate governance, auditing practices, and regulatory oversight. The fact that such a massive fraud could go undetected for so long has raised serious questions about the effectiveness of the systems that are supposed to safeguard our financial markets.
It's a sobering reminder that even in highly regulated industries, fraud can flourish, and that the consequences can be devastating.
Absolutely. The Wirecard scandal has eroded investor confidence, damaged the reputation of the German financial system, and triggered calls for significant reforms.
What kind of reforms are being considered?
While there's a push for stronger regulations and increased oversight of auditing firms, there are also discussions about enhancing the powers of financial regulators to investigate and prosecute corporate fraud more effectively.
It sounds like this scandal has really forced a reckoning within the financial industry.
It has indeed. The Wirecard saga is a stark reminder that corporate greed, left unchecked, can have devastating consequences. It's also a wake-up call for all of us to be more vigilant and to demand greater transparency and accountability from those entrusted with our financial well-being.
Well said. We'll be right back after a short break to discuss the aftermath of the Wirecard scandal and what lessons we can learn from this cautionary tale. Stay with us. Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told As podcast. We've been exploring the rise and fall of Wirecard, a tale of ambition, deception, and the dark underbelly of the financial world.
Yeah, it's a story that continues to unfold, even years after the company's collapse. As investigations continue, lawsuits pile up, and the search for the fugitive COO, Jan Marsalek, goes on.
Before the break, we were discussing the far-reaching implications of this scandal. It's not just about the billions of euros lost, but also about the erosion of trust in the systems that are supposed to protect us from financial malfeasance.
Right. The Wirecard scandal has shaken investor confidence, tarnished the reputation of the German financial system, and sparked a global conversation about the need for stronger corporate governance and regulatory oversight.
It's exposed vulnerabilities that many people didn't even realize existed. We often assume that these large financial institutions, especially in developed economies like Germany, have these robust checks and balances in place.
And to be fair, many of those safeguards do exist, but the Wirecard case has shown us that even the most sophisticated systems can be circumvented when there's a deliberate and coordinated effort to deceive.
It's a reminder that we can't simply rely on regulators and auditors to catch every instance of fraud. It requires a collective effort from investors, journalists, whistleblowers, and even everyday citizens to be vigilant and ask tough questions.
Absolutely. We need to foster a culture of skepticism, where we don't blindly accept corporate pronouncements at face value, but instead demand transparency and accountability.
So what can we as individuals learn from the Wirecard scandal? It can feel overwhelming to think about trying to prevent something like this from happening again.
Well, it's important to remember that we all have a role to play. As investors, we need to be more discerning about where we put our money, doing our due diligence, and scrutinizing company financials. As citizens, we can support investigative journalism and hold our elected officials accountable for ensuring strong financial regulations.
It's about being informed and engaged, not just trusting that the system will take care of itself. The Wirecard story shows us that the system can be manipulated, that even those entrusted with upholding it can fail.
It's also a reminder that corporate greed, if left unchecked, can have devastating consequences. The pursuit of profit at all costs can lead to ethical lapses, risky decisions, and ultimately to the kind of catastrophic collapse that we witnessed with Wirecard.
It's a cautionary tale that underscores the importance of ethics, integrity, and responsible leadership in the business world.
It's a reminder that success shouldn't come at the expense of truth and transparency. Real sustainable success is built on a foundation of trust and ethical behavior.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into the rise and fall of Wirecard, I think the most important takeaway is this. We can't afford to be complacent. We need to be actively involved in safeguarding the integrity of our financial systems, demanding better from our corporations, our regulators, and ourselves.
Well said. The Wirecard scandal is a wake-up call, a reminder that the fight against financial fraud is an ongoing one. It's a fight that requires vigilance, skepticism, and a commitment to holding those in power accountable.
Thanks for joining us on Tell Me More Stories Told As podcast. We encourage you to continue exploring this complex and fascinating story. There are countless articles, books, and documentaries that delve deeper into the Wirecard scandal and its implications. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.